Welcome to the Dungeon Plunger Podcast. My name is Jason Weeb, and this is the show in which I, a real-life janitor and dungeon master, teaches you how to plunge in and run a better Dungeons & Dragons game. Without further ado, let's plunge into this week's episode, Fake It Till You Make It. Hit it! Hello all. Your friendly neighborhood dungeon plunger here, armed with my +1 plunger versus toilet mimics at the ready. Here we are with another fun-filled episode, ready to massage your ears and warm your hearts. In Montreal, we continue to get hammered by snow. When will it end? When will the snowpocalypse end? What have I been up to? I'm very happy to announce the Dungeon Plunger podcast is now available on YouTube. Fortunately, at the moment, it is just audio only, so you will not be able to see my beautiful face. I know. It's sad, but eventually, one day we'll make it there. And then you'll be able to stare at me in the eyes, listening to my sultry voice. In other news, what have I been listening to? Well, I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of them, and I'm always open to new ones. So if you have a podcast that you recommend that I listen to, you let me know. You know how to do it. So what have I been listening to? I've been listening to the Solo Role-Playing Podcast by PJ Sack. Pretty rad dude. Got a nice Australian accent. Very soothing, seductive. Soothing? You know what I'm saying. The other one that he has two podcasts. Another one's called A Wasteland Story. It's a 2D20 solo playthrough of the Fallout game from Modifius. It's great. So I highly recommend you check it out. It is located down below in the show notes. I also was on YouTube. The GMologist Presents. I was with Carl Rodriguez. We were talking about Pathfinder, and he did a little unboxing, and we discussed some Pathfinder stuff, and it was fun, and I really enjoyed myself. Lastly, I did an interview with Jason Connerly from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. That's not out yet, but eventually it will be, and once it is, I will let you know. And I guarantee you, Jason will let you know, because that dude is the most prolific podcaster out there. Always working hard and always out there to keep you informed and tell you a little bit about stuff that you didn't even know that you needed to know. In terms of gaming update, what do we got on the burners? I'll tell you, my gaming has never been this busy. I am so packed to the gills with gaming. It is unbelievable. You know, I'm a very lucky individual at this moment in my life. So I've got Friday Night Magic every week. I play Commander. It's my format of choice. I think one of the cool things about Magic is that, you know, there's so many different ways of playing the game. You know, you've got sealed, you've got constructed, standard, commander. There's a dozen different formats out there. And then on the role-playing front, I've now hit session number 14 of my Barrow Maze campaign, powered by Shadow Dark. This is my game that I'm running for my daughter and her friends, and they're having a blast, and I'm having a blast. You know, I've suggested, hey guys, maybe we hit up the new D&D 5e 2024/25, and they're like, hey brah, we having fun, let's just stick with what works, you know, and I'm cool with that. So we're gonna continue along my second session with my brand new all ladies except for one bro. You know who you are, bro. Dolmenwood campaign continues. We just finished Winter's Daughter. It was excellent. I highly recommend that adventure. We should be starting session 3 very shortly. Unfortunately, that means that I have to drop out of one of my games that I'm online, because I feel like the face-to-face gaming is something special. I need to hit it, you know, while it's hot. My longest running game right now is my Stars Without Numbers Traveler game. We're playing the Pirates of Drynax. We are now at our 22nd session. It's been almost a year, or maybe a little bit over a year, that we've been playing this game, and it's been fantastic. I have this big map of the Trojan Reach, and my players love it. They love to plan out where they're going to go, you know, what systems they're going to hit. It's been probably one of my more successful campaigns that I've ever run. I'm super happy with it. Glad that that my players have been enjoying it. Online front, I've had a bunch of stuff going on. I've got 2 different kinds of games going on. One is a play-by-post. I've never done play-by-post before, but right now I got Carl D. He's running us through the Nightmare Over Ragged Hollow by Joseph R. Lewis. This is a little module that was put out by the Merry Mushman. Honestly, it is super fun. super well written, and Carl is a great game master, and he's been doing a great job at running a play-by-post. Eventually, I would like to talk to him about his experiences running the play-by-post, what he thinks works, what he doesn't think works down the line, like, so what you can do to run your own play-by-post game. This was my first experience. I think he did a fantastic job so far. You know, it's like, it's a little bit of micro D&D. You know, you play a little bit every day, a story emerges. Also, Carl D is running us through Mothership. We've now hit session 7 or 8, depending on how you want to track it. 7 in the sense that we've been having our main campaign, and then 8 because we've kind of got a little side trek cyberpunk type deal going on. I believe it's Pound of Flesh, where there's cyberpunk rules. I believe that's also where the setting is taking place in terms of this big space station that we're working on called Prospero's Dream. But we started the game off with another bug hunt, which was awesome. I really like it. I think that's a fantastic way of starting a Mothership game. What I think is really awesome is that I was sort of under the impression that Mothership was really only good for like one-shot horror scenarios. And while I think it does do a very good job at that, it's also quite good at doing a campaign as well. Due to the deadly nature of the game, just how tough skill checks are, it really encourages you to like think outside the box about how you're going to do stuff and not just try to approach it in a shoot 'em up kind of a way. But I'll tell you something, that hasn't stopped us from blowing up stuff. We've blown up a lot. Also, foam guns. Very good. Get yourself a foam gun. Lastly, I still haven't done it, but now that I've managed to get the podcast onto YouTube, I intend to get a video version going for the solo game or solo games that I would like to do and put up online. That is coming shortly. Things have been progressing. I'm very, very happy with how things have been going. That is basically the gaming update, the little news update of what's happened in the past little while. All right, so I think it's time to dig into some calls that we got, see what people have calling in and saying. All right, so let's hit it. Digging deep into that mailbag. So the first call we've got here is from Jason Connerly. Jason always calls in. I can't say how much I appreciate that this dude, you listen to a podcast and Jason's called into it. And if he hasn't called into it and he finds out about your show, he will call into it. Very, very prolific and much appreciated. So let's hear what Jason had to say.
Hey, Jason, the other Jason, calling about how to master being a game master. Thank you for asking your new group my question, by the way. I appreciate that. And so the main tip I would say that I've heard really good game masters that I respect say helps them is to record their sessions and re-listen to them. Not necessarily publish them as actual plays, but just record the sessions for their private use and re-listen to them to help them refine their delivery as a game master and to pick up the lulls and to think about, maybe here I should have done this or this, and to, kind of so they can re-listen to their games. I've heard a lot of people I respect say they do this. I haven't done it. So, that kind of tells you what kind of game master I am, huh? Obviously, repetition helps. And of course, remember, you do want to invoke all 5 or 6 senses, or, 8 or 9 senses, depending what kindred that you're playing that day. But yeah, try to invoke all the senses. That'd be the other thing I would say. But great job. Look forward to your next episode. Take care.
Thanks for the call, Jason. I really appreciate that call. I've heard the record your session before too, mostly for people who play online. And I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure how well it works in a face-to-face game, but I'm sure it's possible. I especially like the idea for the reasons that it saves you from having to take notes at the game, and then you're able to like run your game more smoothly knowing that, okay, I can just go back and re-listen to like what happened during the session, take down the important things, especially the little things, because I know that when I take notes, often I miss some of the details that players bring up. So I think that's really great. Also, the invoking the senses. One of the things that I heard PJ talk about on his the solo role-playing podcast, he basically has a table that he uses to roll on to see during this scene what sense is being evoked. I think having something similar to that in your game that you can roll on to just kind of like an encounter roll, right? I think it's a good way to remind you we're so focused on what we can see at the table. And oftentimes too, as players, I know I'm a very visual person, right? Quite often I might forget about what we can taste, touch, feel. Like you said, obviously different kindreds, ancestries, races, whatever it is that you want to call them, may or may not have different senses that they could tap into. Even the idea of like good and evil, or elves being able to see things particularly well, dwarves having the ability to detect sloping tunnels like it was back in the day, right? Thank you very much for the call in. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you answered responded to my questions about what you guys think. Next up, we've got a call from Riley from Diegetic Advancement. Right now, his show is talking about chainmail. It's pretty interesting. I wasn't really familiar with chainmail or what the dilly was with it. So listening to him talk about it has been sort of insightful. I didn't quite realize that it was really like a Dungeons and Dragons style war game. Let's hear what Riley has to say.
Hey, Jason, thanks so much for taking my call and digging into it. I think it's a really interesting topic. For me, you can only pick so many hobbies, and why not get good at them, the ones that you do pick. And so it's interesting to think about how you might want to go about that. I found that criticism or critique is hard to get from your players as much as I want it. One of the things that is really useful when you're trying to get at something is having someone, a coach or a mentor, right, who can observe and be frank with their advice with you. It's hard to get that at the table. It's all well and good if you know another experienced DM, but I think for a lot of us, we're the only GM that we know, in person at least. So I think, to be honest, I need to take your advice and start playing online with some more GMs. And I've done that a little bit, and that certainly has been useful to play as a player, as well as sort of then practicing actually GMing. One thing I also wanted to add on the note taking, I think that's really useful. Although, as you said, some of that stuff's kind of hard to track. Like, what are you actually tracking there? What I like to do, and I don't write this down because I'm lazy, even though I should, but I like to think at the end of a session, like, what's the synopsis or the summary of what happened there in that session? And is that interesting and exciting? And is it something that would happen in the genre that we're trying to emulate, right? And if it's not, then, okay, maybe there's an issue, right? We need to think about, if we didn't do anything exciting and daring, okay, well, why not? Is that something that we can improve on? Keep the episodes coming out. Really enjoying them. Bye for now.
Hey, Riley. Thanks for your call. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I agree, man. Trying to get your players to be honest with you and give an honest critique it's hard. And, it would be nice if we did get it. In some respects, I think players are like, dude, you're doing a good job. I think we have to take that. Sometimes when they agree with us, we just got to be like, hey, man, you're doing a good job. And I think what we're looking for as game masters is a little bit more of a, well, okay, but what could I want to be better. How do I get better? I think that's a really great point. And yeah, it isn't easy to find a coach or a mentor, but I'm glad that, you're taking the opportunity to try and get, experience with other game masters as an opportunity. I like your idea of, writing down a synopsis of, what happened in the game, what you were hoping to get out of it. And, if you didn't get it, why didn't you get it? How can you make it better? And, when it comes to the lazy DM thing, listen, I'm right along there with you. One of my favorite sources of game master inspiration and how to run the game is Mike Shea from Live Flourishes, The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I don't want to be spending 200 hours working on my campaign for a 2-hour or 3-hour session. I do want to talk about prep later on in another episode, that there has to be a distinction made between how much time are you putting into your game outside of it versus how much you're putting into it at the table. I think at the table is what really counts. If you're having fun doing what you're doing, that's a different story. If you think that you got to spend a lot of time to like make a great campaign, think you might be wasting your time. Thanks again for the call. Really appreciate it. Hope to hear from you in the future. Keep up with the podcast, man. I've been enjoying listening to your discussions on chainmail. Okay, final call here. Folks, let this be a warning. When you put out ways for people to contact you, you're going to attract strange people, okay? And case in point is this next call, as you'll plainly see. All right, so let's hear the next caller.
Hi, Jason. You already know who this is. If you don't, we have a problem. I just wanted to say that I listened to your third podcast. I was in the car. I normally listen to audiobooks in the morning, but my daughter turned on your podcast and listened to her for about 5 minutes, and she got out of the car because I dropped her off at work. And instead of putting on my audiobook, I continued listening. You know me, I'm not a D&D player, but I really enjoy listening to you, actually. I like the way you put your own personal stories into your podcast. The only thing I can say about it is that when some callers call in, it's hard to hear their voices. I don't know if you can make that a bit clearer, especially the ones with... But yeah, you're doing a great job, really interesting, very proud of you, and I hope to hear more of it. Bye.
So there you have it, folks. Remember, strangers, stalkers. She sounds like a stalker. Mystery lady, I'm glad that you listened to my podcast. I'll try and do my best for when callers call in and see what I can do. I'm not really sure. I'm not an audio engineer. I do know a few. Maybe I can chat them up and see what they have to say. I'm glad that you're enjoying my stories. You know what? I hope you call in again. You sound like a sweet lady, you know, driving your daughter into work. I mean, that sounds like what a good mom would do. I wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Hope to hear from you in the future. All right, you take care. That are all the calls that we got this week. So thank you very much for Jason Connerly, Riley, and Mystery Lady for calling in. Very much appreciated. You too can call in or leave me an email. I have a speak pipe. You can find that in the show notes. All you need to do is click on the link. It'll take you to a place. You click on that, give it access to your microphone, and leave me a sweet little message. You got about a minute and 30 seconds. You can leave as many calls as you want, and I will be more than happy to listen to them and respond to them. Also, if calling isn't your bag, you can leave me an email at dungeonplunger, all one word, at gmail.com. Moving on, we're getting into the meat of the show, the main episode, how to fake it until you make it. All right, story time. In previous episodes, I've talked about how I went back to school late in life. I was about 35, I'd been laid off. It was a time to make decisions. I made a list of things that I would need to do to be successful going forward. I had three major bullet points on that list. 1, get my high school diploma. 2, learn French. And 3, gain some sort of professional recognition. The high school diploma really came out of left field for me because I grew up in Winnipeg in Canada. In the entirety of Canada, except for Quebec, you graduate high school when you're in grade 12. When you finish grade 12. However, in Quebec, you graduate high school when you finish grade 11, and then you kind of go off and they have this college program that's sort of in between high school and university. It's sort of like a transitional program. And they offer, much like many colleges out there, these professional programs that you can take in order to get directly into the job market without having to do a university degree. Because of when I moved to Quebec, I sort of fell in between the cracks. And so I was able to get into college in the very beginning when I first moved here. Later on, when I decided to go back to college after dropping out, the administrators were like, hey, well, you don't have a high school diploma, so you can't be here. And so if you do want to do this, you're going to have to go and get a high school diploma. And I was like, oh my God. That's what I did. I went back, I got my high school diploma. I spent about a year and a half learning French full time. Then I had to decide, well, what was the program that I wanted to do? And so one of the programs that I wanted to do was to become a nursing assistant. I had a bunch of different motivations for why I wanted to do that. One being that I was looking for some sort of profession where I wouldn't necessarily be able to be laid off again, that there would always be work for me no matter where I went. But also, I was looking for some way to help. I wanted to give back to the community. I wanted to be able to be a productive member of society. Finally have a big boy job, because I felt like I've been working in warehouses. I was a mover, and I never really felt like I had a job where it mattered. Felt like the job that I had was really important to the kind of person that I was. I mean, in retrospect, it was a ridiculous way of thinking, but, I had a lot of weird thoughts about things back then. Going to college for nursing was probably one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my life. I was one of 500 applicants that got chosen to go into this program. I felt extremely honored. Then getting into the program and realizing that I was one of the oldest people in the class, and not only that, but I was one of 5 dudes in a class of entirely women, was a little bit of a culture shock. I was full of so much self-doubt. I built up a lot of confidence going back and doing my high school and learning a language, and I really felt like I had come a long way. I felt like this was a hurdle that I just wasn't sure if I was ready to be able to leap. I felt like part of that was because my entire life, my entire future felt like it was riding on this, that I needed to succeed at this. Otherwise, I was going to be branded in a complete failure by everyone. I think the biggest person who I was worried about being branded a failure by was myself. I think we do that a lot. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves without even realizing that most people talk to us and support us better than we support ourselves. Everything that I did while I was in college was just completely anxiety ridden. Every exam that I took made me want to puke. I was just constantly stressing about whether or not I was going to be able to succeed. That stress really came to a head during our first clinical experiences in the hospital. I don't know if it was that particular year or if it was just a change in how the staff looked at us as students and started to say, hey, the way we've been teaching this program there seems to be a lot of anxiety in the class in general. I know that our school was trying to revamp their program. They were trying to reassess about how they could make the program better and more attractive to future students. I remember one of the teachers saying, guys, you just need to fake it till you make it, which sounds kind of sketchy, especially being in a program where, you could potentially hurt somebody. She said, obviously, there's caveats to this whole statement. We need to stay within the scope of what we've learned so far. We still had to be safe in our practice, both for us and the patients. Ultimately, nobody becomes a nurse because they want to hurt people. I remember thinking to myself one day, I was like, dude, how can you justify being afraid of taking an exam, sitting down and writing this exam, when one day you want to work in an emergency room? Taking these things that these teachers said, taking this idea about being stressed about taking an exam, it changed my entire outlook whenever I had to take a test from there on out. Because all anxiety and worrying does is block your ability to think properly and do what you need to do. All you can do is do your best, put your best foot forward, and put faith in yourself. I know what you guys are all thinking, but DP, you said you're a janitor, so obviously you failed. What's the deal? Are you some kind of a hypocrite? Why the flip should we listen to anything that you have to say? In the end, I did end up graduating nursing school. While I was in school, I was working every weekend as a housekeeper in the very hospitals that I was actually doing a lot of my stages, my actual work experience. In the end, I realized that I didn't really enjoy nursing, that it wasn't really what I wanted to do as a career. Don't get me wrong, there were many things that I loved about doing nursing. A large part of it had to do with working with patients. What always amazed me was just how willing patients were to trust you, even as a nursing student, and open up and share parts of their life with you, their stories, without even really knowing who you were, but they just knew that they could trust you with these things. I think that was the thing that hurt the most when I decided that I was going to leave. Because I had learned all of this, I had all this housekeeping experience working in the hospital, and we were paid well to do what we did. Ultimately was a vital part of working in a hospital. One of the things I've learned about working in a hospital is that there are so many professions beyond nurses and doctors that make up a hospital that you really need all of these different people to make it function. And if you take away any one element, the ability for a hospital to do what it does greatly diminishes. That was where I saw probably some of the most nastiest things that I've ever seen in terms of, being a janitor. That's a different story for a different day. The important thing was I learned a lot of things. I learned that I wasn't an idiot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about life. The biggest thing that I learned was new ways to approach problem solving, how to work through these problems, a host of other practical skills. Again, I hear you guys saying, okay, great story, DP. How does this apply to game mastering? It's been my experience in life that fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and a sense of being an imposter holds us back from reaching the potential that's within us all. Ultimately, you have what it takes to be an awesome game master. You just need to believe in yourself and just do it. Like I said before, if you think about the way you talk to yourself in those private moments, no person would ever talk to you that way. Even your enemies probably wouldn't talk to you the way we talk to ourselves. It all comes back to this idea, this concept that, you need to be willing to fail. You need to be willing to look and feel silly. You need to be okay with the unknown. And that is part of where this improvisation comes from, because players will throw things at you that you're just not ready for. You have to know that the players are on your side. They're not against you, and they're not going to laugh at you. Or at least they're not going to laugh at you in a bad way. The good thing is that we can learn these things as we grow. At its core, being a good game master starts with this kernel of confidence that you need to build up. And this kernel of confidence, it's the essence of faking it until you make it. When your players gather around that table, virtual or otherwise, instill their faith in you. That nugget of faith is basically that as players, we know that you're the game master and that you will make mistakes, but you're human and that's normal, and we support you. Think that while there are a ton of tips out there that we can apply to being a better game master, there's all the doodads that you can get, the battle maps, the figurines, the books on advice, game prep tools, and the repetition, and all of those different things. But at the core, if you don't have confidence in your ability, then none of that matters. I'm going to tell you, I know that you have what it takes to be a great game master. And ultimately, you're giving back to the community when you do it. Maybe not to the extent of like a nurse or a firefighter or any of these stereotypical professions that we look at. Sharing your time with your friends, making good stories together, and sharing in that accomplishments around the game table. That's giving back, and that's important, and it's not always recognized as that's what it is. That's all I gotta say this week, folks. Let me turn it back around to you guys. What do you do that gives you confidence to run your Dungeons & Dragons game? That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all the callers, Jason Connerly, Riley, and Mystery Lady. Intro and outro music is by Alexander Kizanaku. Background music by Audio Coffee at audiocoffee.net. Amazing Dungeon Plunger cover art by Jon McNally. Remember, you can call in and leave a message at my SpeakPipe or send an email at dungeonplunger@gmail.com. And remember, when you're plunging into the dungeon and nature calls, watch out for mimics disguised as toilets. They're a real pain in the ass. Peace out!